Hey, it's Matt Haynes, and today on my camera I have a brand new shotgun microphone. It's made by Mackie. It's the EM-98MS. I'm up in Ojai, California, and I found this trail. I think it's a trail or a fire road or something. I've never been on it before, but it's so quiet. There's no wind. In fact, it's so windless that I don't have the dead cat on this microphone. I'll put it on later, but I wanted to try out the microphone just by itself, without a dead cat, without a pop filter, and hear how it sounds. The shotgun microphone from Mackie has a lot of interesting features, and we can talk about how they compare to some other shotgun microphones in the marketplace. One thing the Mackie microphone has that other smaller, cheaper shotgun microphones don't have is a gain control, so you can fine-tune the gain of the sound going into your camera. And this is quite a long microphone for an on-camera microphone. I didn't bring a ruler, but it's longer than the Deity D4, but it's shorter than the Sennheiser MKE-600. The microphone is an all-metal construction. It feels very durable, very solid, and it's a wider diameter than some shotgun microphones. It also has a shock mount that is a two-piece shock mount, so in other words, it holds the microphone in two places. It's not a Rycote shock mount as far as I can tell. I think it's something Mackie has made. It seems like it's going to do a good job, but we'll test that in a little bit. This microphone is powered, and by that I mean it has a battery inside. However, it's not a replaceable battery, it's a rechargeable battery. There's a USB-C port on the side, and so you can plug it in to charge up the microphone that way. And the USB-C port is also used as the audio output. Now, unlike the Deity D4, this microphone is not a USB mic. In other words, you cannot use that USB-C port to plug into your computer and have a digital signal. That port is just for charging and just for an analog audio out. Another interesting feature of this microphone that I haven't seen on a whole lot of on-camera microphones is a safety channel feature. With the push of a button, you can, instead of recording the same level on both left and right channels, you can record a normal level on one channel and a reduced gain version of that on another channel. That way, if you overload your camera's inputs, you got a safety. You should be aware, though, that if you have a built-in limiter in your camera and you are hitting that limiter hard with some really strong input, then the safety channel is also going to have its volume reduced, and it could still affect your audio. So you don't want to hit your limiter too hard, you don't want to overload your camera, but it's nice to have that safety channel. And in fact, I'm using that right now. This microphone has a lot of controls on it. There's also a low roll-off filter that you can engage. So if you are having some wind rumbling or something else where you want to cut down those low frequencies, you can do it right there on the microphone. And that way you don't overload your limiter, you don't distort your microphone and things like that. So, and you have two choices too. You can roll off at 75 hertz or 150 hertz. So let's hear 75 hertz. All right, we are rolling off at 75 hertz on the Mackie microphone. You probably notice a little bit of low frequency loss there, and that's the whole point of the filter. Now let's hear 150 hertz. So now you're hearing the microphone rolling off at 150 hertz, and it's probably a bit more extreme. You probably notice it a lot more, and let's go back to normal. So like I said, the microphone has a shock mount that has 2 points of contact with the microphone, and that's because it's a really long microphone. You wouldn't be able to get away with a single point of contact because it would just sag in the front. So let's see how well this shock mount protects against sounds here. I'm gonna bang on the monopod that I'm using for this camera right now, and we can hear how it protects against the shocks emanating up through the camera. Now you will hear some banging noises because, you know, the sound waves are traveling through the air, but we're looking for like resonant frequencies or really sort of like obvious transmission noises. So I'm gonna bang on the monopod here. I'm also gonna bang on the camera, banging pretty hard too, and I'm gonna bang my ring on the monopod. The air is starting to move around a little bit. I wouldn't call it a breeze yet, but I think I'm going to be putting the dead cat on soon just to protect my audio. Before I do, though, there's a few things I wanted to check. The first test I'm going to do is an off-axis test where we hear how the microphone rejects sound from the sides and the back. So obviously this is on-axis. This is 90 degrees off-axis with the Mackie microphone. This is 180 degrees off-axis with the Mackie microphone. And this is 90 degrees on the other side with the Mackie microphone. And we're back to on axis. As I turn the camera around for this test, I realized that there is another feature of the Mackie microphone. There is a headphone jack, a mini jack built into the back of the microphone. So you can monitor your audio as you're recording. While we don't have a breeze blowing yet, I do want to do a simulated wind test because this is a way to consistently compare microphones to each other and also compare how they perform with and without the dead cat. And I do that simply by moving the camera in a semicircle at arm's length to generate some fake wind. So this is without the dead cat. Let's hear how it sounds. Okay, let's put on the dead cat now, and you can hear how the audio changes, and also we'll do a wind test there too. Okay, now this is the Mackie shotgun microphone with the dead cat on. It's quite a fluffy dead cat. I was a little worried it was going to protrude into my shot here with this ultra wide angle lens, but it doesn't, so that's good. And you're probably noticing some frequency changes due to the dead cat. And that's normal for dead cats, but you don't want a dead cat that cuts down on the high frequencies too much because it really impacts your sound quality, and that can be a problem. Okay, so let's do a simulated wind test with the dead cat now. This microphone goes for about $150 retail, and so I started thinking, okay, what is the competition here? And I mentioned the Deity D4 earlier. That one goes for about $100, so obviously that's a third cheaper than this microphone. I'm going to compare it with that. I brought the Deity D4 along with me. And then another microphone I'm very familiar with is the Sennheiser MKE-600, which I mentioned before, but that's in the $350 range. And that's kind of a different category of microphone. So I don't think this is meant to compete with that. So the question is that $50 extra that you would pay for this microphone over the D4 worth the price? All right, now I have the Deity D4 microphone on the camera, and I suspect that you're going to notice a different sound quality right off the bat. Now, the D4, I don't have the dead cat on. I will put that on in just a moment, but I wanted to let you hear how the microphone sounds by itself so that you can compare it with the Mackie microphone. I'm not going to go into the features of the D4 very deeply because I did a whole review on this microphone a few months back, so I recommend going to check that out if you're interested in the D4. The D4, as I mentioned, is a shorter microphone than the Mackie, and so theoretically, it might not reject sound from the sides and the back quite as much, so let's do a quick test on that now. We're on axis with the Deity D4. We are 90 degrees off axis with the Deity D4. This is 180 degrees off axis with the D4. And this is 90 degrees back on the other side. And back on axis here. I'm going to do a quick wind simulation test here, just like I did with the Mackie, so that you can compare. And the Deity does not have the dead cat on yet, so this is how it rejects wind just all by itself. All right, let's put the dead cat on now. This is the Deity D4 with the dead cat on, and it's been my experience that there's a noticeable frequency change when you put the dead cat on with this particular microphone. So you probably hear a loss of high frequencies. I obviously can't hear it because I'm recording right now, but when I get back to the studio, I'll be able to compare these as well. There's a little breeze picking up. I really timed this well today because we haven't had any wind. But I'm going to do the simulated wind test here as well with the D4 dead cat on. I think it's time to head back to the studio. I do still have the D4 on the camera with the dead cat on, but I want to go back to the studio so we can check out the sound of the Mackie in a controlled environment. There are a couple of other things we need to look at with the Mackie microphone before drawing any conclusions, but before we do, there's one thing you need to know about me. I do this kind of thorough, in-depth review every single time, so the best way to see more reviews like that? Hit the subscribe button. Thank you. First of all, I got to say that Mackie did a really good job with their shock mount. They didn't outsource it to another company. It's something they designed. I talked to Mackie about it, and it did a really good job in isolating the microphone from thumps and bumps, and I didn't pick up any footstep kind of noises either. By the way, I have the Mackie microphone plugged into the Sony ZV-1, and while I am filming, I'm not really using it as a second camera. It's just a way to have the microphone plugged into something that I can position close to my mouth. When it comes to dead cats, there seems to be two schools of thought with manufacturers. Some companies, they will design a dead cat that slides over the top of a foam pop filter, and other companies design a separate dead cat and separate pop filter, and you don't need one to use the other. From a sound quality standpoint, I don't know if one is better than the other, but I will say from a convenience standpoint, having a dead cat that you have to slide over a foam pop filter, I'm not a big fan of. And the reason is, well, two things. Because sliding it over that pop filter can take some time. You're kind of like wriggling it over and it's kind of squishy. It's just tough to get on. And also, if you end up losing the pop filter, you can't use the dead cat either because you need that to put the dead cat on. So having a separate pop filter and dead cat, I think, is the best choice from a convenience standpoint, and Mackie has made that decision because, as you can see, I have the pop filter on here, and the dead cat is a completely separate unit. You just pull this one off, put the dead cat on, you're good to go. You got to hear the Deity D4 out in the field quite a bit, but now I've got it in the studio, I've got it on the same camera as the Mackie, and this is how the Deity D4 sounds. And now you're listening to the Sennheiser MKE-600. I didn't take this out in the field with me, but I do have it here in the studio. I have it on the Sony ZV-1, and you get to hear how it sounds as well and compare it with the Mackie. I will say that unlike the Deity and the Mackie microphones, it is easy to leave this microphone turned on accidentally and completely deplete your battery, which is what just happened, and there was a lot of off-camera swearing, but now I've got a new battery in it, and we're good to go. So, this is the Sennheiser MKE-600. One of the things I'm always concerned about with shotgun microphones is, are they shielded against radio frequency interference? Because you might want to use it with a wireless microphone system, something like that. If you saw my review of the Deity D4, you know that that microphone has some pretty serious problems with radio frequency noise. It doesn't play well with some brands of wireless microphone systems, and it had a lot of noise. I am testing the Mackie EM-98MS to see how it works with the Rode Go-To wireless system and to see if there is any noise that is picking up, any radio frequency noise. Fingers crossed. Fortunately, the Mackie seems to be very well shielded. No matter where I put a transmitter on or near the microphone, no noise whatsoever, so the shielding seems really good. When we compare all three microphones, I think the Mackie and the D4 have the most in common. I mean, they both have a USB-C port to use as their audio output port. They both have a variable gain knob, and they both automatically detect when they're plugged in and they turn themselves on. But the Mackie has some features that the D4 doesn't. Like, it's got the safety channel setting. It's got the 2-position low roll-off filter, and it's got that headphone monitoring jack on the back of it. Now, the D4 wins if you are looking for a microphone that also doubles as a USB microphone. You can plug it directly into your computer, you're good to go. If you plug the Mackie into your computer, it'll charge the internal battery, but you can't use it as a USB microphone. Also, the D4 has a removable AA battery, so if you run out of power, you just pop that battery out, put a new one in. If you run out of power on the Mackie, it means you gotta go charge it up, and that could take a couple of hours. When it comes to sound quality, I think the Mackie beats the D4 quite significantly. The Mackie has a richer, fuller sound, a more substantial low end. The D4 to me sounds a bit mid-rangey. For me, the sound quality is the kicker. That extra $50 is worth it just for the sound quality alone. So how about the Sennheiser MKE-600? It's $200 more than the Mackie. It doesn't have a safety channel. It does have a roll-off filter, but it's just a single position. And it doesn't have a variable gain knob. The MKE-600 does have an XLR jack on the back of it, which is essential for professional recording, and it allows you to operate with phantom power if you wanted to as well. It's also a longer microphone than the other two, and I think it rejects sounds from the sides better than the other two microphones. I do think the MKE-600 sounds better than the Mackie, but it's a slight difference. I think it sounds a little flatter. I think it sounds maybe a little bit of crispy, high end, a little bit of a boost there, whereas the Mackie maybe doesn't have that boost. But it is a very slight difference. For strictly on-camera use, and I'm talking no USB plugging in, no XLR cable plugging in, I think the Mackie EM-98MS wins hands down, except for the name. I mean, the Mackie EM-98MS, I have trouble remembering that. But otherwise, the microphone's pretty phenomenal. If I had all three of these microphones in my traveling camera bag, I would reach for the Mackie every single time. The combination of solid but light construction, the thoughtful features, and the really excellent sound quality makes me want to choose it every time.